Hello, everybody. This is Milena from School of Data. We're here today with our fellow Dona for a skill sharing session on photoactivism. So just a very quick introduction about what School of Data is. We are a program that aims to teach data skills to journalists and civil society organizations. And we have 12 amazing fellows from around the world who are at the moment being trained in data skills and becoming better trainers. As part of their fellowship program, they are leading these amazing skill sharing sessions, and we have Donna here today who will talk a bit about photoactivism. This is a hangout on air, so people can join us either here in the hangout, or they can watch us live on YouTube and on the events page. I will be monitoring questions, so feel free to ask questions in the events page or here in the chat, and I will make sure that Donna sees the questions, and we'll have hopefully a bit of a discussion at the end. So with this, I'll pass on the mic to Donna. Donna, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dona. As Milena said, I'm one of the wonderful fellows this year. And I will talk to you guys a bit more about photoactivism, and not just the brief history of photoactivism, but also I'll share with you some tips and tricks on photography generally. So I would start, if it's okay. I prepared two presentations for you guys. I will start with the first one, which is the brief history of photoactivism. Okay. So, I don't know about you, but when anyone mentioned photoactivism to me before or even now, the first thing I think about is this photo over here that I put the very first on the slideshow that I prepared for you guys. So basically, if you haven't read a lot about the photo, it's a photography by Eddie Adams. It's shot in Vietnam, and it made a huge impact on everything around the world, on how we see war, on how we see photojournalism, and actually the picture that people had in the Vietnamese War. So when asked about the photography, Eddie Adams said that two guys died on the photo, the one being shot with a gun and the general shooting the prisoner because I shot him with my camera. So if we talk about photoactivism, I would start with the very beginnings, and that is Louis Hine. As any cliche slideshow, it starts with a quote. So Louis Hine said, two things I wanted to do. I wanted to point out the things that had to be corrected and to show the things that must be appreciated. So actually, Louis Hine, born 1874, was an American sociologist and a photographer, and one of the many first that used their camera as a tool for social reform. And actually, his photos were of huge importance and instrumental in changing the child labor laws in the United States. I will just run through some of his photos that I chose for you, so you can actually see what he did. So you see how awful things used to be for kids. You can check more of his photos online. There are a lot of them. They're all wonderful. I mean, wonderful as a photography, not that good as a subject. Okay, so why the camera is the perfect tool for social activism. One of the best things about camera at all and pictures is that they save moments forever. So you can just go through them and go back in time whenever you want. And it's not just important to use your camera, it's also important how you use it. And that's why we're going to go through the tips and tricks on using cameras. And why is camera different and photography different now as it was, let's say, 30 years ago or 100 years ago? Because now you have online photography sharing, and that is especially important for social activism, because now you can put 300 photos of an event online, and then one can see them. But let's say that 30 years ago, it was just, there would be just 3 photos chosen for media, so they can actually They can actually manage what the media can actually manage what they want you to see. Like if you have a huge protest that happened in Macedonia, we're gonna talk a bit about that too. So if you have a huge protest, I can make you 3 photos that will look like there were only 3 people on the streets, and if we choose only 3 photos, that people would think that it was only 3 people there. But you can fight against this with choosing 300 photos. Also, another great tip that I want to always share with everyone is if you do take photographs, especially of events, please share them as soon as possible, because actually people forget that something happened more than you think. So sharing them, let's say a maximum of 4 hours or 6 hours after they were actually taken is the best. One thing I always remember when talking about this is what Slavoj Žižek said in an interview. He was talking how people know all the bad things that happen around the world, but we don't actually believe them before we see a video or a picture of it. So we know that there are a lot of people being killed every day, but actually before we see photos or videos taken from any war, or it doesn't have to be a war, we really cannot believe that it's true. I will just make a little break and ask everyone if they have questions up until now, but okay, I will continue. So the slideshow is basically made of photos that I chose. So I will just go through them. It's photos that made the biggest impact through history, and they're tagged as a huge part of the photoactivism movement. This one, actually, when I was reading the story behind the photo, it's a Sudanese child with a vulture taken by Kevin Carter. So the story is, everyone who sees the photo actually asks themselves why he didn't just go there and save the kid, because just a couple of hours after the photo was taken, the kid died because he was too hungry and got eaten by the vulture or something very nasty like that. Actually, Kevin Carter said that between him and the kid, there was a huge hole that he couldn't pass, that he couldn't save the child. But being too depressed after taking the photo and after it did a huge, what the word is, after one talked about the photo so much, he killed himself. That's a bad story. But another photo from, there are a lot of photos in this series. It's lynching in the 1930s. This is Elizabeth Eckford, which is one of the first 9 that went to school with the white people. If his name is Thich Quang Duc, I don't know if I'm reading it okay, but Thich Quang Duc self-immolated himself as a sign of a protest, because the sharing of the spreading of Buddhism was actually forbidden for some time. And the thing is that it's an interesting fact behind the story, behind the picture, that he didn't move one muscle while he was burning. Okay, here are 2 or 3 series that I chose for you that actually are photos taken in Macedonia. So I wanted to kind of share some stories from around here. These ones, the first series, is from a huge protest that happened in 2011, when a kid, actually a 22-year-old Martin Nishkoski, was killed by a policeman. And the protests lasted for days, actually for 1 month, as I remember. And the thing why I chose this is that the media has always tried to spin everything and to change the perspective by showing little photos and saying that it didn't happen, or just small amounts of people showed up in the streets. But actually what we did is we asked everyone who had a camera to go out and take as many photos as possible and share them on social media. So here are some of the photos that me and my father took. So when talking about photo activism, it doesn't have to be photos from protests or anything. It just has to be something that, like activism itself, it has to be something that you want to share with everyone just to make a point and to change what you don't like. This is also something that doesn't have to do with anything about photo activism, but activism itself is that this wonderful band, Berenice Propaganda from Skopje, recorded a wonderful song that became a huge hit around the time. It's also on the murder of Martin Niszkowski. Before moving to the other series, anyone has anything to add? Everything is clear so far. Thank you, Marielle.
I'm monitoring as well the events page, and so far I think nobody's asking questions there, but there are some people that are watching us live. Hello to everybody.
Cool.
Feel free to drop questions in chat or on YouTube.
Hi, everyone. Okay. So the second part I wanted to show you from Macedonia is something that happened a year after the murder of Martin Niszkowski, and something that doesn't happen a lot around the world is that the opposition party was thrown out from the parliament. It was a huge mess that happened right after that. A lot of people on the street, a lot of nasty fights happening. So actually we again took some photos of that because I believe it's something that controlled media would never show, and they didn't. There's also a wonderful book that got out with these photos. I would gladly share it with everyone. I have the PDF version of the book. It's free to share, or I can also send you the hard copy if you want. You see, a lot of people got hurt. It was awful. The police was very brutal. Actually, on this photo, and there's the one that we did that's a bit better than this one, but you can actually see the face of the man that wasn't so nice with the people. And because not all photo activistic photos are from protests, I put a more artistic one from a friend of mine, Dimitar. It's an old series of photos, but my favorite one from all of his. It's called My Homies. So it's photos taken from the Roma population in Skopje. He became very good friends with them after this. But also he got beaten a couple of times because he wanted to make photos, and his camera was stolen once. But you can see that they show the life and everyday of the kids. Not to forget to mention that we will later share the two presentations that I prepared, so everyone can use them or edit them if they want, or spread it, or whatever they want to do. It's okay. Okay, so we will just go through quickly the photos of the year by Reuters in 2013. A couple of days ago, I think they also published the photos of the year 2014, so you guys can check those. They're very good, but I don't think that everyone is very ready to finish the year 2014, so maybe that's why I chose 2013. We have 1 month to go. Okay, this is an injured woman that cried for help after a gunman stormed in the Westgate shopping mall in Nairobi. And I think that anyone can see the titles of the photos and the small explanations. I will just stay with them for a couple of moments, and you can read them, so I don't read it for everyone. Maybe you won't understand something I'm saying. This is Nelson Tavares. He's 24 and he worked on the graffiti of Nelson Mandela. That's a woman being rescued by another citizen. This is an awful story, actually. I will stay with this one a couple of more minutes. So on the photo is Bratislav Stojanovic, a homeless man who lives in a tomb in Serbia. In the name of the city is Niš. He's a construction worker that never had a regular job, and he first lived in abandoned houses, but about 15 years ago he settled in the old city cemetery. So this is his home now. There was a big interview with him around the Balkan media. I think this one doesn't need explanation. This is Ayesha. She's 26 and she's the only female war-ready fighter pilot in Pakistan. This one is a bit funny, but I think that the faces do say a lot. Female North Korean soldiers patrolling along the banks of Yalu River. This is very, I got used actually to the photo because I've seen it now so many times, but it's Diego Miralles getting gored by a bull during the 6th running of the bulls of the San Firmin Festival. This one is very cute. So it's these two guys actually were watching the coverage of the US Supreme Court ruling on the Defense of Marriage Act. I don't know if you guys actually got to read the story, but I think that about 1 month ago, there was this very ugly story that circled around that a kid who actually went through trainings like this one killed her instructor, or however they call him, teacher, with a gun that she was too small to use. So this is a photo of members of the North Florida Survival Group. So they're actually exercising how to survive, and they have a group that trains children. This is a photo from the protests on Taksim Square in Turkey. And this is Liz Light. She's 25, and she's lying down in front of the grave of her brother who fought in both Iraq and Afghanistan. This actually is not what it looks like, but it's a very nice photo. It's a photo from the protests of the firefighters in Belgium. So whenever they riot, it looks somehow like this. They were fighting for better working rights or conditions in the center of Brussels. It's a photo taken on Tahrir Square in Cairo last January. I would advise everyone to search for this story. It's a wonderful story. It's a researcher, Werner Freund, who actually lives with wolves for a couple of years now, and he's actually the alpha wolf in the pack. And that means that whenever they get an animal to eat, he's the first wolf that eats. It's a very nice story. You just go through it on Google. You can Google it. It's Werner Freund. It's a very nice story. It's another photo of a woman who carries home a washing machine. So you see that basically there is no pattern. It can be anything that you can think of, but the only thing they have in common is that everyone doing them and sharing them fights for something better or a better change. This is also a very, I don't know how to say it, but it's a bad story. It's Isa on the photo. He's 10 years old, and he works every day in the week except on Fridays, together with his father in the factory for weapons. It's a photo of young Palestinian groom and his bride-to-be Tala. They're 15 and 14 years old. This is the photo shoot on their wedding day. Okay, so as I said, there's not a typical area where the camera can be used as a tool for civic activism, but some of them that you can start with is, let's say, exploitation of children, lives of minorities, as I showed you the photos from my friend, environment and ecology, huge question right now in Macedonia, animal abuse, conditions in the toilet, and just anything else that you can think of. So you see here that I shared with you guys the link to the photos of the year 2014 from Reuters. And before going to the other slides, I'll just show you guys my beautiful face again. And let's see if anyone has something to add. I think that we have just enough time. It would be 30-30 for my presentations, and then we can have some questions if you guys have. Okay, Open Knowledge says it's all good for now. Okay, so the next presentation I actually prepared for you guys is that one on sharing tips and tricks, and maybe something that I actually put together with my, sounds funny, but 10 years of experience in photography. I know that also Milena shoots some really good photographs. Maybe she can do this next Skillshare on photography.
I am trying. I'm an amateur. I think you're much better than me.
No, but I saw them. They're very good. Very good.
I wanted to ask people if you guys have any examples of photo activism from your country, or if you have anything to share with us before we move to tips and tricks. I think Donald's examples are obviously very touching, very visual. They were all a little bit depressing. But I guess that's what happens when you want to expose any injustice or any wrongdoing. They will eventually be hurt a bit. You know, they will hurt a bit watching them. Anybody else? Mariel says that in Mexico it's become crucial for evidence given the government repression in protests. So photo activism obviously super important all over the world where people are getting arrested or there are protests, and again there's the official side, the government side of the story, and there's this the rest of the people who use their cameras and use their tools to cover the events.
It would be, if I can jump in, but it would be very good if anyone can just add examples if they have to the slides that we're sharing, and maybe we can have one big slideshow with many examples from around the world that I wasn't able to point down.
Absolutely, and Mariel as well said that photos have been used to show irregularities in people's arrests. So, again during protests when people are arrested, there are photos showing police abuse, probably, which is super important. All right. So if nobody else has questions, I'm monitoring the events page. If you guys have questions, drop them here. Oh, Happy has a question. Where else can a photojournalist publish her work if mainstream media doesn't pick it up? Are there any online communities or alternative publications that we can check out?
Well, actually, I haven't run into anything that works good, but I think that for now, it's very good just to publish them anywhere. I do use Flickr still. I know that people don't use it that much nowadays, but I still use Flickr, and then just try to share it as much as possible on social media and ask for people to share them too. So I think it still works, but it would be very good if anyone finds something like that. I didn't find anything, but if you do find, please share.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends a lot on what works in your country. Like, I think Facebook sometimes it's weird, but it can work. Or Twitter, they are quite well known as being good alternatives to mainstream media. I'll just give a very brief example. Recently, we had elections in Romania, and Codrina is here and knows about it. And I live abroad. I live in London, and I wanted to vote, but there were enormous queues. There was a big inefficiency in how the votes were handled abroad. So what we did, everybody in the line took a lot of pictures, took a lot of videos, and everybody uploaded them on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, and the mainstream media in Romania eventually picked it up. So at the beginning they were like, there's no problem, everything is going all right. But as people posted many pictures, and the more people posted, the more they actually were picked up by the mainstream media. So I'd say use the social media that is mostly watched and mostly used in your country. I think that can possibly work.
There's a funny story that reminded me of, but it happened in Serbia. Actually, the opposition didn't show up in the parliament, so a guy from the ruling party took a photo of it and said, okay, so look at this, all of these empty seats around here. The opposition didn't show. And actually someone replied, I saw a couple of them having coffee on the streets. And after it went viral and everyone was sharing the tweet, the opposition came back in the parliament just 15 minutes after the first tweet. So yeah, I know that Twitter works very well in Serbia. It also does work a lot in Skopje, but I think that mainly Facebook is still the social media where people want to share stuff that they want others to see. Okay, so I think it's okay to move to the other presentation.
Yes, please do so. So now we'll hear a bit more about how to actually take these amazing pictures. What are the composition rules and colors, and how should we make a good eye of photography from now?
Okay, here it is. Okay, so you see the huge writing. It just says photography because it's, yeah, basically just tips and tricks on photography. And what I would tell you guys, if you asked, do you have anything to share and what works best for a composition? So when talking about nicely composed photographs, let's say that a good photograph requires careful planning and sometimes being very patient. So you don't have to rush. The good thing about the photography nowadays is that we have huge SD cards. We can take a lot of photos and then choose just a couple of them that we think are very best. But that doesn't mean that we have to take thousands of photos, but sometimes you have to plan and wait patiently. It's always very good to have a clear purpose on why the photo is made. So let's say on the photo, if you want to really show the bird flying, I would rather suggest that you actually crop it a bit differently, like this, so you can actually see the bird better, but not the surroundings. So the choice is, what part of the subject do you want to include in the photo, and should it be framed? Yeah?
We don't see your presentation. Can you try again?
Oh, really?
Sharing the screen. We see your picture. Sorry.
Okay, so we'll just have
to repeat
everything.
Mariel can see it. It's just me. I can't see it.
Let's try again.
Everybody else can see the presentation. Can you drop a quick message in the? All right. Sorry, it was just me. Share your screen again, Dona. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so can I continue when we stopped?
Yes, please.
So basically, sometimes it goes down to two choices. It's what part of the subject you want to include in the photo, and should you frame it horizontally or vertically. It's a huge question, and the thing is that we always try to frame everything horizontally, because I've read on so many places that we do that actually because it's the way our eyes see the world. So actually, when you look, you see stuff more horizontally spread than vertically. So it's more natural to the eye to take the photo framed horizontally. But when talking about horizontally framed photos, let's say that they're best for when the object you're shooting is horizontally placed or is wider than it is tall. Also for objects in motion, let's say vertical motion, not horizontal motion, sorry, not vertical, since it also leaves room for movement. You will see in the next photos that I prepared. And also to usually enlarge the space, so that's why actually the landscape photography is mostly horizontally framed. And for vertically framed photos, they're mostly best for when the object is taller now than it is wide, when the object is moving vertically, and when the goal is to focus on a particular object. So that way you get decreased distraction from the surroundings when using vertically framed photos. Okay, so here are some photos. You have a photo that's that's taken horizontally, and that's the same surroundings taken, the same object taken vertically. So you can see the change in impact it has and how different actually it is. Some other photos also taken horizontally. This one is the same subject taken vertically. Okay, I had to include some fashion photography. Yeah, so you see it's the same object taken 2 times, once horizontally and once vertically. Do always simplify and enhance the focus on photos with using uncomplicated backgrounds. It's always very bad to choose a very colorful background and not to. That way you cannot really separate what you're taking photo of, the object that you're taking the photo of, and the background. So if you can find uncomplicated backgrounds, it would be best. And if you avoid unrelated elements in the photo, like taking, you don't have to include that bench in the photo where you take a photo of your friend in the park, and always using contrast. So also a huge tip is that placing the object outside the center is finalizing with greater dynamics in the photo. Some photos with the tip I just shared would be these. You see this using great contrast and putting the subject not in the very center of the photo, and they try to blur the background so you don't have very distracting surroundings. This is another photo where a huge contrast was used. And generally, pictures with objects directly in the center, as I said, are experienced as more static and less interesting from the photos that set the objects outside the center. But you can search a bit more online. There are more tips and tricks going deeper into this. That there are some points when you really want to put the object in the center, and it will make a bigger impact. But in the end, it comes back to you that you get to choose where do you put your object. Another great photos. So maybe the most basic rule in photography when talking about composition is the rule of thirds. It doesn't have to be 3 thirds, of course. That's a mistake I made, but the rule of thirds. What is the rule of thirds? It's as I said, the most basic rule for a good balanced photography. So the photo is divided in thirds, horizontally and again vertically. So in the end, you get 9 equal parts. And the idea behind it is to place the object in one of the thirds. Another tip that photographers always share is when taking a photo of a person, try to place the eyes in the intersection of 2 lines. Most of the cameras today, they have the grid lines that you can turn on. So they actually do the job for you. So they really separate the picture in 3 parts. This is how the grid would look like. Does anyone have anything to add up until now?
Hannah has an amazing set of examples of some activists from South Africa. Hannah, do you want to turn on your mic and speak a little bit about it?
Cool.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
perfectly.
Okay. I just thought it was interesting. Like, these are a couple of activist groups based in Cape Town, and they mostly work around the issues of inequality in the city of Cape Town. And it's just interesting that because they sort of do interventions in public spaces. So, for example, they might do some graffiti or do a performance piece or something along those lines. Whatever they do is usually cleaned up very quickly by the city because they don't want it to be there, and therefore they spread their campaign via photos. So if they didn't document their work, it would sort of disappear, and this way the images of the stuff they do go viral and just help communicate the issues they're trying to highlight to people. So I just thought it was a kind of different but also interesting way that photography is really important.
Thank you, Hannah. I will also try to share this around. That's a very nice example. Yeah, Happy says, I love it when photography and installation art come together. That's I love it too. Very good. should I go on? And then we can have in the end a little chat about everything. Let's share the screen.
So I think we were at the rule of thirds.
Yeah, I'm just trying to share my screen.
Did people try ever to use the rule of thirds? Did you know about it before? It's quite famous, but it's not that easy to always remember to use it.
Yeah, but I think that after some time you get used to it. So you don't just think about it. You just do it. Thank you, Happy. Okay, let's go on. So that's the rule of thirds, and here are some examples around it. Can anyone see my screen? Yeah, cool. Some examples. You see how the photograph put the eye of the person that he was shooting in just the intersection of two of the lines of the grid. Another example of that would be this one. So basically, you choose which third to use. Another tip that I would share is that when you shoot a photo of someone moving, it doesn't have to be someone, it can be something moving, you would like to always leave extra space. So actually, the person looking at the photo can imagine where the person would go or the object that's moving would go. So you have to leave some, you don't have to, but it's nice to leave some extra space where they can move, something like this. So actually, if you leave an extra space in front of the person's moving here, the person looking at the photo will think that they will move from left to right, left to right. And if you left some space behind the people, the person looking at the photo would usually think that they already passed. That's not just because they're facing right, but it's also not just for moving, but it's a nice theory that when people look at photos, they actually look at the photos from left to right because that's how we usually read. I know that there are countries where people read from right to left. That would be another rule. But in countries where everyone reads from left to right, they usually look at the photos in the same way. So you see here, there is a lot of space left. So you can imagine where he moved, like this person, he already passed this far. Also, when shooting horizons, it's good to leave the vertical horizon and vertical objects outside the center. Sorry, I said vertical, but it's actually horizontal. Yeah, I didn't see that before. So horizontal, the horizon, and vertical objects. Like in these photos, you can see that the horizon is actually not in the very center of the photo. Also works for vertical objects. Something very interesting about photography is using lines. They're considered as a very powerful tool in photography, so there being very different types of lines. Actually, people try to think of, and I read in a lot of places, so I can come up with a couple of conclusions. But they say that when looking at lines of photography, depending on the type of lines, that you get different views. Or so they're good because they lead the eye through the photo, and they also dictate the mood, as I said. So a lot of people say that horizontal lines dictate something static and constant through time. Vertical lines mean stability and peace, and diagonal lines always mean more action and dynamics. These are a couple of nice photos that I choose where you can look at lines. So you see how your eye is led through the photo using the lines. Diagonal lines are always considered the leading lines, and they indicate the direction of the photo. They're always easier to follow. Another type of lines, or actually not a type of lines, but lines that are repeated in order to draw attention to the center of interest is also an interesting part. It would look something like this. And also something very interesting is the S line. So curved lines are not like regular straight lines because they're slow and calming, and depending of the direction, they can be melancholic or encouraging. These are two photos where you can see the S line. There are a lot of them. If you Google S line, you would see a lot of them. And I think that balance is one of the most important things. So actually it depends. There are photographers that say that balance is not very important. Actually, this balance is more important, but I think that a balanced photography is a very powerful photography. And there are a lot of aspects to it on how to achieve a balanced photography. Maybe someone wants to share something. I know that Hannah maybe knows something about this, being a designer. So if she wants to jump in and share something on balance, would be great. But I mostly pointed down to two things. It's the Fibonacci spiral and the golden ratio. So when I think of balance, that's what I think of. Actually, think of Fibonacci and the golden ratio. Maybe you guys already know it. I believe that you do, but this is how the Fibonacci spiral looks like. So you actually get it when you put together squares starting from, let's say, 1 millimeter. So you put together a square with sides of 1 millimeter, and then you add another one with 2 millimeters, and you go like that. So in the end, when you connect the intersections, you get the Fibonacci spiral. This is something that Fibonacci himself, of course, being named Fibonacci spiral, came up with, and it's very repeated through nature itself. And they say that it's, up until now, the best definition of beauty, together with the golden ratio, or at least it's good to look at. So there are many examples from nature, and not just nature, you see. But looking at them, you can see how powerful they look. And not just the Fibonacci spiral, but also geometric shapes themselves. Another tip I would add here is when taking portrait photography, you always try to achieve this triangle with the shoulders and the face. So this is not actually geometric shapes in photography, but yeah, that has to do something with geometric, so I put it here. But this is another examples of geometric shapes and their power in photography. Symmetry and balance do not always have to mean the same thing. Symmetry is also very powerful, sometimes boring, but if you know how to use it well and do a nice photography, it can be very, very nice, like the photos below. I don't know if any of you guys have seen the Metropolis movie. It's a very old one, 30-something, 1932, I think, or 4, doesn't matter. It's from Fritz Lang. The whole movie is basically so balanced because a lot of the scenes are shot with symmetry. It's a very nice movie. If anyone haven't seen it from you guys, I really recommend it. It's very good. It looks so clean because of the symmetry in every scene. Another good thing about taking photos is framing them, but not on the wall after you shoot them, but while you shoot them. So basically, you set the center of interest in a frame, but using the help of other objects in the foreground. In that order, you can achieve depth, which is among photographers known as depth of field. So these are some examples. You see how the photographer tried to frame with the pillars in front of him. This is using also depth of field, which is basically being that one part is in focus and the other parts are blurred, whether you want to blur them in a software after that or using a good lens actually does it by itself. Another example of framing would be this one. This is a more of inception, a frame in a frame in a frame, but again. So it gives very nice surroundings, let's say, but I think that to me it looks very good when you have something framed. Makes it, at least makes it more interesting to look at. Because people always think that there are so many photographers nowadays and it's so hard, like in music, to make something new and fresh. So maybe the good thing is to always think a bit more and find a fresh angle when shooting photography. So I chose a couple of photos for this. This is one of the most famous photos of the Beatles. And why is it so different? Is because the angle is so fresh. This is also good for framing photography, this one. I also added a part, I don't know why, because I really like shooting children's. Okay, that didn't sound that well, but yeah. So when shooting children, do lower yourself to their level, because let's say children also are small. So the best thing is to always get your camera very low, and just to try to shoot them in. So you place actually the camera in their height, or how it would be in English. But you see what I'm saying. It's very interesting to shoot people from above. It can make some good effects, but getting in same height with the person that you're shooting and objects too, I think that has the best impact in photography. Again, the horizontal horizons, it's not very easy to make your horizons in a photo very horizontal, and that's because the wide-angle cameras, actually the wide-angle lens, they have this thing that the lines are not very straight when you shoot them. They tend to bend a lot. So there are a lot of tools online, and then there is Photoshop and GIMP that you can use for editing photos, where there is the tool that's very easy to use, where you can straighten your lines because you don't want the horizon not being horizontal. Another tip is to fill the photography. So let's look at this one. If it was a photo of a bug taken and not cropped so well, but let's say that there are 90% of the surroundings and there is the bug somewhere there that you cannot really see it, that's not very nice, right? But this photo is so good, and so beautiful just because it's taken from very close, or it's afterwards cropped very nicely. So you actually fill the photo with the object that you're shooting. Depending on the impact that you want to achieve, but sometimes you want to fill the photo and sometimes you want to leave some more space, depending if you want to show more dynamics or you want people to concentrate on one thing or not. But it comes down to what you want to take a photo, actually. Another interesting and huge in photography for the last couple of years is shooting patterns. So whenever people see good patterns at buildings or anything else, they try to shoot it, and sometimes it looks very nice, or like this. I like it. I think it's very powerful. Again, I just told you about it, but always think when you do a photo, always think if you should crop it to make a bigger impact or make the photo looking better. So you just get rid of all that surroundings around it. But when cutting or cropping photos, try not to do this. So try not to crop at people's foreheads. Try not to crop in the middle of the hand or something. But try to leave a bit of a space, or at least to have the whole object in the photo. But cropping foreheads, I think, is the worst thing that happens usually. And it goes down to being that the main skill is where to stand and when to push the button. This would be a couple of rules and tips and tricks, but some of the best photos actually violate the rules of photography. And I would say that first you have to know the rules so you can break it. That sounded very deep, but I think that works like that. So that's actually the presentation that I prepared for you guys, the second one. It would be great if anyone has anything to add. I will go back to
You
camera.
guys, is anybody having any questions? I think it would be great to hear a bit your voices, and if you could turn on your microphone. Of course, you're also welcome to paste your questions in the chat or on the events page of this Hangout, and I'll make sure that I will read them out loud for you. I think in the past, Dona, you had a question from Rita on how you achieve that special focus of yours in pictures. So we've seen some of Dona's pictures from events before, and we've seen that she's very good at putting a good focus on the people in the photo and like kind of blurred in the background. Can you explain a bit how you're achieving that?
Yeah, so usually that happens when you have a lens that's, let's say, starting from 50 millimeters. So actually the lens itself does it. I usually use the 85 millimeter lens, and I put the it's called depth of field actually, what I do. So if you put the shutter speed on 1.4, so you choose which part of the photo that you want to be focused, and the lens itself blurs the background, so it actually separates it better. But I also do it in Photoshop, because not always the lens does it for you. So I actually use the blur tool, but if anyone wants, we can also do the Skillshare on editing photography sometime in the future. But it's very good. Yeah, it's very powerful. Like the depth of field is one of the best parts in photography. I would say the most. It especially works very good with when shooting people. Cool apps for phone photography. Well, I do use my phone a lot just because my camera is too heavy to carry around, and phones have good cameras at the moment that they used to, and I used to hate them a lot, but now they have nice cameras. Cool apps for what, like Instagram? I don't use a lot of apps, happy, but for editing photography maybe, or for sharing photos.
I think there should be a lot of apps out there that do this kind of cool effects, like time lapses, for example. It's not real photography; it's more movies. But there are some tools there that do, like they take a picture every second or every 2 seconds, and then they collate this into a movie. So the movie wouldn't be fluid like a normal one, but would speed up very fast and show movement. I use that a lot for events. I think it's very funny when you show a presentation or something, like instead of 40 minutes in 45 seconds or something like that.
I'm not really up to date with apps because I go the old school style with taking clear photos, and then I can do with them whatever I want using more not so basic softwares. But I think that there are a lot of apps, very good ones. I tried to download, and then I would use them for a couple of days, but download a newer one, and kind of says you want a large aperture. Yeah, smaller aperture. I said shutter speed. God, my English is so good. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to say aperture. If you put smaller aperture, then you have more focus. That's what usually happens. The wide-angled lenses, they usually don't have the so big apertures to choose, so they're basically more clear. But when using teleobjectives or the zoom lenses, they usually let you choose from the aperture, and you can go like from 1.4 to 5. And let's say that, from my experience, if you want to get a clear photo, it's always best to go with aperture between 3 and 5 if you have enough light for that.
How many of you guys use a professional SLR camera? because I think unfortunately not in all cameras you can set your shutter speed, your aperture, and things like this. Only when you shoot with a more professional camera in manual modes. I think I have a fairly decent camera, but unfortunately I use it a lot in auto modes. That doesn't really allow me to do all this. So I think the golden rule, if you have a good camera, is get rid of the auto mode and go manual. I think an easy way to shoot with good aperture is to do aperture mode. There are three things that are important in photography. There's the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO, which is the quality of the. It used to be the film, and now it's just the quality of the sensor in the camera. So it's quite hard to get the balance between these three, and that's full manual, sorry. But like if you want to just control one of the variables, you can go, for example, aperture mode or shutter speed mode or things like this, and you just control one variable, and all the others are calculated by a camera. And I think that's a good way to try to take good pictures with a good camera. Anybody else wants to speak? Adrina, you have some good comments? You're not able to open your speakers. So she has a question and she wants to borrow my voice. She's not a photographer, but she's a cartographer, and she's aware of the possibility of introducing the viewer's perspective through small tricks. She knows something like, this is not true in photography too, but is there any way of identifying these situations? For example, in cartography, we can say, be aware of the projection distortion. Is there something like this in photography?
Yeah, I don't really. So you basically want to know about something to induce the viewer's perspective. I don't know if this is okay. No, something else, because I don't really get it. But would you ask again?
So in mapping, there's this thing where, like there are various projections of the map.
Yeah.
And it's like they're the what's called Mercator-Peterson projection, and they are quite different from each other. In some, Africa is smaller, in some it's larger.
Yeah.
Greenland as well can be quite different because it's more north. And they are all correct mathematically. It just depends how you do the projection. And I guess that's what Katrina means. Like, be aware of the projection distortion. Is there any way that you can make the people aware if someone is trying to induce a perspective on a phenomenon?
Like the thing that I told you, like when media are trying to share photos and lie to you that there were 3 people, but there were actually 3,000. I don't think there is a way to know from the photo itself, because a good photograph can take a very good photo of anything and make you think whatever they want you to think. But yeah, it's a very nice question, Kudrina. But I think that pretty much it goes down to judging who shared the photo and who took the photo more than the photo itself. I haven't managed to learn a way or find a way to know from the very photo, and it depends, of course, of what is on the photo and what they took a photo of. But I think that I usually calculate if it's true or not, depending on the media or the person sharing it.
I guess in this sense, pictures are quite similar to data visualizations. No, they can be subjective, and they are a small interpretation of the world. So you see a little bit of the world, as Donna said before. There might be a protest, and somebody chooses to show you just 3 of the people attending the protest, as opposed to showing you the 3,000 people. So I guess photography and data visualization are the same. It depends on who produces it, and they are subjective to some degree, although there's quite some science behind it. Happy, I think you wanted to say something?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Perfectly.
There was an incident here in the Philippines before. There were a group of politicians that released a photo that they were surveying a particular area in the Philippines, and it came out in the news. And then some photographers or some photo experts spotted that the entire thing was photoshopped. So the politicians didn't actually go to the site, and it was just a bunch of photographers who I guess were skilled in Photoshop that spotted it, and they shared it also all over social media. And it became like a meme almost, because people grab that photo and Photoshop them in like all the places with like just changing the background. So I think, you know, so many people are aware of all these photo tricks, and if somebody tries to fool you, there are people who are gonna speak out against it. And yeah, I think there's a way to find out, and the truth will surface one way or another.
Thank you, Happy. Yeah, that's right. Actually, if you have used a photo editing tool for a long time, like Photoshop, then you get to spot all the irregularities in photos, like skin that has been softened and legs that have been lengthened and stuff like that. But sometimes it's not just that. Sometimes it's bigger questions that you get to spot, like this one. But I believe that you have to work a bit yourself on editing photography, and then it's very easy to spot everything. Yeah,
and I guess it's like
Yeah.
with everything else, keep a degree of skeptical thinking around anything that you see online, any kind of news, any kind of picture. I think the photography can say 1,000 words, as they say, but obviously it can be manipulated like anything else. Any news, any piece of information can be manipulated for any purpose. All right, thank you so much, everybody, for attending this. Do you have any last question for Donna? We'll obviously post this in the presentation now on the School of Data blog, so keep an eye there to see more and to download the presentations if you want to keep them. But any last questions for Donna?
Anyone?
I think this was one last question. What are the licenses on the photos used?
Oh, okay. The ones on the Photoactivism. Well, yeah, that's a huge question. I thought of that. I think that most of them are Creative Commons, but I will have to go through that one again. I believe that the one for the activism, all of them are licensed by Creative Commons. You can really use them, but the one on tips and tricks, I don't know if I know that when I was doing the presentation, I got so angry that I couldn't find good photos to put that are licensed Creative Commons, so I might have put some of them that I wasn't supposed to. But I can check again, Kondrina, and share with you, or maybe we can find and change some of the not suitable photos with good ones but licensed by Creative Commons, if you want to do that.
I think we should definitely do a skill sharing on licenses. I don't know if you guys heard, but there was we speak of photography, and I've just read an article about Flickr starting to sell some of the pictures that were put by users in Creative Commons, which is it's an interesting debate around licensing. If people decided to license them as Creative Commons without having a non-commercial clause, I think it's quite within the legal purposes of the law, but obviously it's a bit immoral of a big service like Yahoo to make money out of people's pictures. But yeah, exactly. So Katrina shared the story here in chat, so feel free to look at it. And I think that would be a really interesting start of a debate about licenses and how we use licenses, for example, for photography. All right. So if nobody wants to add anything on this note of being careful of what licenses we use with materials we share, I'll thank Donna for the amazing presentation and for teaching us a lot of things about photography today. And thank you all of you for attending and for asking amazing questions. And again, follow the blog for more materials. All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll stop broadcasting now. Bye.
Thank you.